Hello and welcome. You're on Bharat Shakti. I'm Nitin Gokhale. And with me today is Air Marshal RGK Kapoor, who was till some months ago the Commander-in-Chief of the Central Air Command of the Indian Air Force and a veteran aviator, of course, with years of experience, decades of experience in the Air Force, and someone who is now a strategic analyst, I would say, an observer of the defense aviation space, general aviation space. And I thought I'll get him over to talk about Indian Air Force's plans for enhancing its combat capability as well as future plans in the context of the Aero India show that is about to conclude in Bengaluru as we speak. Today is Friday, and maybe by Saturday it will get over. But welcome and thank you for your time and coming over to our studio.
Thank you, Nitin, and it's always an honor to come and talk to you.
Thank you.
Always great to interact with you.
So let me start with the obvious. The Aero India show, of course, happens every 2 years, and this time the headline it got sort of overshadowed by Chief Marshal AP Singh's purported private remarks to HAL officials, saying, "I'm not happy with you. I'm not confident about HAL's abilities." Obviously, he was talking about LCA delays in LCA deliveries. Where do you think the Air Force is as far as the LCA is concerned? It has always put its confidence in the LCA, but what are these problems that he was talking about?
Primarily, the problem I think that he was talking about was, firstly, the delays in delivery, for which I think partially I won't hold entirely HAL responsible because of the delay in GE404 delivery periods. The other thing which I think was very, very important that he said was about whether what the HAL flew was actually Mark 1A.
In Aero India?
In Aero India.
Right.
Because finally, when we say we are flying Mark 1A, it is a full capability that we are delivering.
Sure.
So, Mark 1 and Mark 1A both are supposed to have GE404 engines. So, you could interchange the engines.
Sure.
So, it is not the engine which is important. It is the system integration, all the other sensors, integration of weapons, and other technologies that are expected out of actual LCA Mark 1A is, I think, what he was talking about.
Right.
And that is where, in today's air combat, the most important thing is not just whether a aircraft flies at 9G or can pull 9G. It is mostly whether it's got actual sensors, so whether the ELTA has been integrated, the ASA radar, whether the weapons that we want, that is the Astra, the LGBs and the R-73 or consequently the Hammer air-to-ground weapon, whether these all have been integrated, whether the systems are functioning the way they are supposed to function. I think that was more of a remark than to say that deliveries, I think he had very categorically stated during the
press conference and the seminar also.
Seminar.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
No, but the point that I was looking at was also, I mean, when this controversy broke out, that successive air chiefs would have spoken to HAL and successive CNCs would have spoken to HAL about what they need to do, how efficient they need to become. It's not something new that an Air Force officer is speaking to HAL.
I think there are many occasions when there are candid interactions with everybody.
Correct.
And so I think the chief was very candid in his remarks, and perhaps it's been made viral is a different issue. But the fact is that there are a lot of systems we are still importing.
That's right.
And I remember that when we go to any country abroad and we want them to do a specific thing, what they include in their plan are risks. The risks assessment, the risks cost, the risk time,
Sure.
everything gets included in the time frame that they project.
Right.
And which is when I studied on some platforms and some integrations, I realized that it is a major component of development part of the aircraft. I hope HAL did include those risks and the risk assessment was done.
Sure.
But what it also means is HAL needs to be more realistic and practical than before it gives a timeline.
Yeah, I think
Because of which what will happen is at least the capability development will not suffer. And we will not be constantly running behind schedules and doing a cost and time overruns, which affects the capability.
Absolutely, and then you can actually plan if the capabilities are realistic and or the roadmap is realistic. I think that's where I think the frustration comes in as far as the Air Force is concerned.
Yes.
So let's look at the future roadmap. I mean, you were involved at the highest level of the Air Force leadership till the other day. What is the Air Force's plan, you think, over the next, say, 10 years, if not more?
Air Force
fighters, and then we'll talk about others.
Yeah. So I think Air Force's plan was to go in for initially get the 40 LCA Mark 1s. Then the orders was placed for 83. 97 more LCA Mark 1As are under AON. And once the government clears, the contract would be placed with the HAL. So that would make it 220 Mark 1s and Mark 1As.
That's right.
Then about 120 LCA Mark 2s and consequently AMCA.
That's right.
In addition, we have upgraded the Mirage, the MiG-29 and Jaguar.
Yeah.
So these aircraft should last around in the time frame of say about 2032 to 35.
Exactly.
By then all these aircraft should have been replaced.
Sure.
And finally the MRFA should have come. The basic intent of getting the MRFA was one, to make good the voids that are presently there, and second is to leapfrog technologies. Primarily there are certain things that our industry and our development establishments are fairly good at, like aircraft structures,
right,
software development, composites,
sure,
even other components of the aircraft, which is what we are doing fairly well. But avionics, sensors, sensor integration, semiconductors, chips, these are the areas where we are a little, I think, behind the curve.
sure.
And this is where if we thought that if we get MRFA, we could leapfrog these technologies, and that would help us in both LCA Mark II as well as AMCA.
It was a parallel kind of a development
Correct,
could have happened in that sense. But MRFA also had the component of make it in India. I mean, have some parts coming in directly and then have it thing. But it's already got delayed by over 3-4 years now. And now the Rafales having come in, 36 of them have come in from 2016 onwards. What's the way out to make up for these lack of numbers that the Air Force has? Because that must be a major worry.
I think if the LCA Mark 1As and LCA Mark 2s, they come on time and they are able to not only replace the MiG-29s, the Jaguar and the Mirages, but also create a little more than that number, that should suffice.
Okay.
In fact, if we feel that we want additional, we should go in for additional LCA Mark II.
Right.
I think what MRFA is going to give us now, I think other than Rafale, most of the other aircraft are actually in the same category as LCA Mark II.
Yeah, because that older generation.
That's older generation.
Yeah.
And so what we now need is those critical technologies, identify the critical technologies, but in terms of pure capability wise, I personally feel that we cannot lag behind China and Pakistan because MRFA will not give us the jump over them in a 5th generation fight.
That is the dilemma.
That is the critical timeline that we have come to now. And if we don't take any action in next 5 to 7 years, then this gap with China at least will become a little difficult to bridge. And with Pakistan, it will become a cause of concern. Primarily because they have also entered into a partnership with Turkey on Khan.
Yes, which is the fifth generation aircraft. So we'll come to the fifth generation program and the plans that are there. There is this other debate parallelly that goes on, that HAL's monopoly has been the cause of delays and lack of accountability. Do you think first of all, Indian private sector should come into aerospace and defense manufacturing? And if they do we have companies which can step up to the challenge?
If we have a broader look at our private industry, even HAL, I would say. I mean, I'm not comparing private industry with HAL.
Okay.
If we see C295, it is built to design.
Right.
That means it is like what HAL would do
with
in the
Sukhois
previous years. With the Sukhois, that design is provided.
Right.
Certain amount of semi-knockdown or complete knockdown and certain part of indigenization takes place.
Sure.
Where the critical areas are still addressed by the OEM. That black box HAL even cannot open.
Right.
So, private industry, for it to reach where HAL has reached today, will take some time.
Yeah.
But it has to be incentivized, because lack of competition will breed further complacency, I would say, if I can use the word.
Yes, of course.
Complacency.
Yeah.
And when you have a single service provider, the things may not turn out the way you want them to.
Exactly.
So in that case, private industry can come up. It will have to be incentivized by the government to do that job, because finally private industry is nothing but a business.
Sure, they will always look at the bottom line.
So bottom line. So I think if there is a hand holding between DRDO, HAL and private industry, with very clear cut objectives on what to make, then I think it is quite possible with a future clear path to future.
Right.
That is only if we are able to export.
Sure. So make in India for the world, what has been thought about, should be one of the key elements of private sector participation in aerospace and defense. I need to take a break. Don't go away. I'm in conversation with Air Marshal Ravi Kapoor. We are talking about Air Force, its plans for acquisition, and we will of course talk after the break on the Prime Minister's recent visits to France and US from the point of view of what Air Force should be expecting from these two countries, and President Trump's announcement at a joint press conference with Prime Minister that US intends to sell F-35s to India. Don't go away. Welcome back. We are in conversation with Marshal Ravi Kapoor on Indian Air Force, its acquisition plans for fighter jets, and of course the global context, especially in the background of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visits to France and the US, which have just concluded this morning. He is on his way back, I'm sure, from Washington DC. But what has emerged out of that discussion with President Trump at the White House is that President Trump has directly, like his style, pitched for India to buy more F-35s, or not more, but F-35s, and he has said that the US intends to sell F-35s to India. So let me ask you straight away, are F-35s good for the Indian Air Force?
What Air Force needs is capability.
Right.
And fifth generation capability in very short time.
Okay.
Now, F-35 is a proven platform. I think more than 2,500 aircraft are on order for US and its friends, and more than 1,000 aircraft are flying. I'll give you a simple, a scenario,
Okay.
if I would.
Sure.
recently Israel carried out a strike against Iran.
Sure.
It had F-35, F-16 and F-15EX. Now, which aircraft India can have this capability? I can say that F-35, then you have Mirages as well as Su-30s
Sure.
and the Rafales. So, if you combine these three, it is purely the similar capability.
Okay.
F-35, I think primarily, so fifth generation is a no-brainer.
Right.
We need it
Correct.
in terms of the geostrategic environment that we are in.
Right.
And the kind of, if the timelines that HAL and DRDO are saying, if they meet, then I think 4+ generation should not be a problem.
Sure.
The basic concern of some people in India has always been whether we can completely rely. That means
on the United States.
On the United States, in terms of how United States monitors its military sales. That is, it has you sign an end user agreement.
Yes.
It has you sign an enhanced end user agreement, and it will monitor most of these, some of the line replaceable units of F-35 from its closest allies go back to US for servicing and upgrade
Because
and maintenance.
nothing can be touched. You can't do any modifications there.
Absolutely. And so, with the kind of geostrategic environment that we face, we cannot, we have to make it future-proof.
Right.
And so, I think if we can make it future-proof, then F-35 would be a very, very good option.
Sure.
Because it's combat-proven.
Right.
But I would primarily believe that whether it is F-35 or Su-57, there should be an expert committee which should deal with the final, what we want
Decision,
to buy.
yeah.
Decision. Because I don't think sitting here in a studio,
No, you can't.
we should not say whether F-35 should come or Su-57
No,
should come.
Donald Trump will say, of course, because he is transactional, he wants more defense sales to India. He will say that. The decision has to be Indian decision.
Absolutely,
like
whether
you are
we
saying.
want. But the advantage, how we could leverage it is, I'm sure USA will not transfer the technologies with the F-35.
Right.
But we could ask the US to collaborate, those companies which are making this technology, collaborate with us.
Right.
To help us leapfrog and reach these technologies for the LCA Mark II and as well as AMCA. The reason for a fifth generation is that before AMCA comes, AMCA will be in development till 2035.
Right.
If we get a good fifth generation aircraft by say 2030 and 2032, what it will do is it will help us absorb the technology, it will help us learn and evolve, it will help us identify what could go wrong in AMCA so that timely corrections are given and we could achieve AMCA instead of 2035 probably in 2033-34 time frame. That would be the biggest advantage that we should look at.
Right.
And I would feel that because it's a combat proven aircraft and it's a single engine.
Sure.
Is what I feel. And finally, if you have two engines, you are going to have much higher maintenance and life cycle costs.
Exactly.
So, in future also our budgets would be limited.
Of course.
The cost of F-35 is around $80-85 million.
Right.
And with other weapons and with the condition that yes, if US sells F-35 to India, it should be on similar conditions as Israel.
Which is the top model, I think, that they give to Israel.
Not only top model, it should have certain flexibility for India to integrate its own weapons and sensors.
And also use it the way India wants it. Because
yes.
I think one of the dilemmas that Indian decision makers have is the restrictions US puts
Absolutely.
on the use and operations of, say, aircraft like F-35. And that has been one of the biggest concerns, which is what has prevented India from going in for fighters from the US. Because they put so many restrictions, like you mentioned, on, they don't allow any integration, they don't allow any modification. So that dilemma has to be this thing, and what has to be resolved. What Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri in his press conference actually said is that the process hasn't begun. But the fact that President Trump has backed it at a press conference mentioned it by name that F-35s will be sort of allowed to be sold to India. Seems that the US is very determined to sell it to India. Now the decision is the ball is in India's court. But the other comparable thing, like you said, is Su-57, but that has twin engine.
It's a twin engine, and there are capability differences between the two. If people, what I see on Twitter or X,
right,
is that people are more enamored with Su-57
yes,
than with F-35.
Correct.
But just for the viewers, I would like to say that a fifth generation capability, if it is within your eye view,
yes,
then it has failed its mission. So the fifth generation capability should not be assessed by how it performs in air display.
Right.
It is what
Surya
lies,
currents are there for
yes,
that.
yes. What lies inside
Yes.
is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that is what should be there. And secondly, the F-35 came from a line squadron.
Right.
And it was a line pilot who was flying. It was not a demo pilot.
Not a demo pilot.
So it was not a purely a...
You're true. I know. In fact, Aero India, that was a major discussion point apart from the chief's remarks. So that was a discussion point there. But more seriously, ultimately, I think India will have to go in for the AMCA, develop its own capabilities by using as many technologies you can absorb or collaborate with. And one of the dilemmas there, I want to sort of end our discussion with the point on what engine India should go for AMCA, the fifth generation aircraft that India is trying to make. The competition again is clearly between Safran in France and GE from the US. And the capability that India wants is some 110 kilonewton thrust for that engine. Safran has said it will sort of establish facility and have a joint IP with DRDO of India. GE hasn't said that yet. So our ultimate aim should be to have our own capability development as far as indigenous capability development is concerned. So whether F-35 comes in or whether we go in for Safran or we take more Rafales, we don't know. What do you think about the engines on that count?
Finally, I think we should be independent and we should be able to manufacture engines within the nation. But as we have seen that the present capability does not match up to the requirement that exists in terms of the thrust. What is important in this is that the only country in the world which is now gone on to variable design engine, which is for the sixth generation.
Right.
Adaptable engine is what they call, is US.
Yes.
It has cleared both GE and Pratt & Whitney to start developing that engine. And so, whichever engine the nation goes for, there are experts who will obviously brainstorm and see. My only request to them is read the fine print.
Correct.
And the note. And whichever engine we go for, we should not be short-sighted to 2035. It should leave us with a window to grow it into the sixth generation platforms. To see that these adaptable engines, that is the 110 kilonewton is not the end but a beginning to the next level of engine technology.
And for a possible sixth generation leap, maybe 20 years down the line.
Because when AMCA comes out in 2036,
right,
China and USA and even UK, Italy, Japan,
yes,
and another consortium in Europe,
right,
will have sixth generation.
There you are. Yeah.
And so at that time, we should not be looking at, if we are taking help, we are doing collaboration, we should not shy away from first putting money on the table,
right,
and second, have a long-term view to ensure that we go to the adaptive engine technology.
Where you're saying is we can stack up, and get into the sixth generation if necessary, and not necessary, but we must be able to go to sixth generation. I think that's a good point to end our discussion on, and I think it's something very exciting time for the Air Force and the aerospace and defense sector in India and in the globe. We'll see how it pans out, whether we go in for F-35s or we develop or we take some more aircraft from France and then develop this engine. But all that is in the future.
Yes.
I'm sure that will give us more opportunity to discuss further in another episode. But like you said, we can't discuss or decide on what should come in. but at least we can discuss the options that are there. So thank you very much for your time. That was Air Marshal RGK Kapoor talking to us on the Air Force, Indian Air Force, its plans, and what the future looks like. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you already haven't. Of course, like and share this video. And your comments are always welcome. Feedback is essential for any good discussion to be carried forward. At the time we discuss all this, maybe we'll have one more discussion to go forward. But for the time being, it's goodbye.